Hello, my name is Alex, and welcome to Eclectic Eccentrics, a series in which we will be looking at some marvellous and some not so marvellous individuals who have been described as eccentric somewhere along the way. Their stories might delight, terrify, or intrigue you, but they will always entertain. Yes, listeners, a funeral march, for this is indeed our swan song. Not forever, mind, just for this series. As always, the season finale of Eclectic Eccentrics brings you something different. In Series 1 we learnt about the Eccentric Club, its history and its interesting members. In Series 2 we travelled around the world and found out about several eccentric events. And for Series 3, well, it's kind of related to the previous episode where we met Lyndon York, Britain's #1 eccentric famed for his wacky creations. So can you guess? Oh, okay, I'll tell you. Today we are looking at some of the balmiest, the craziest, the most unbelievable, the most eccentric creations the world has ever seen. This is episode 6, the finale, called Eccentric Inventions. In episode 3 of this series, we were presented with an artist, a creative, a formidable eccentric called Edith Sitwell. Now, Edith Sitwell came from a line of eccentrics herself, including her father, George Sitwell. Now, old George created a few balmy things in his life. This included a toothbrush, which played a ditty as you brushed your teeth, though I cannot determine how this worked, and a mini pistol, in which he advertised as being the perfect thing to shoot pesky wasps with. Poor wasps. He is best remembered, however, for his creation of the Sitwell egg. It was, I suppose, based on the Scotch egg. For anyone who doesn't know what a Scotch egg is, it is a hard-boiled egg which has been encased with sausage meat and breadcrumbs. Very scrumptious. Ideal for a picnic. Or, if you're like me, it serves as a nice little driving home treat after the weekly shop. The Sitwell egg, however, contained smoked meat, which was the sort of inner yolk, as it were, surrounded by compressed rice, all held within a shell of a synthetic lime. The purpose of this eggy creation? Well, George thought it would be ideal for travellers who needed food with a better shelf life. It is alleged that he even swanned into Selfridges, yes, that's Selfridges, and announced, "I am Sir George Sitwell, and I've brought my egg with me." Unbelievably, Selfridges didn't take up the offer of buying the product. Enough of that smelly business, and on to our next wild creation. Now, if you are anything like me, you will detest the thought of running, let alone actually participating in any running events, such as a marathon. Now, there are certainly eccentrics, as I understand, that for some unfathomable reason quite enjoy donning on their trainers and going for a wee jog. From reliable sources, I understand that nutrient supplement things are very important, but it's not always the easiest thing in the world to get nutrition on the go. This is where the vegetable juice company Kagome come in. In 2015, at the Tokyo Marathon, they unveiled the Tomatan, designed to give runners tomatoes on the go. The Tomatan is a rucksack-shaped device, like a small robot with a tomato-themed head, I suppose. It has a rectangular prism as a body, which is where the tomatoes are held, arms that catch the tomatoes, and legs, which are levers, and of course, it is all painted red. It's quite a sweet-looking thing, really. To have a tomato dispensed, you pull the foot lever, a tomato is then dispensed down a chute, which runs down the back bit, which is then in turn caught by the arms, which then in turn brings the tomato over the top of the head and down to the runner's mouth, where you can then eat your tomato without having to use your hands. It has capacity for 6 tomatoes. I have no idea whether this is good or not, but I do know it weighs in at 8 kilograms. There is also a mini version which apparently is a little bit lighter. The inventor, Mr. Tosa, does admit they focused more on its visual design. I can't say I've ever seen one out in the wild, so I don't think they've caught on yet, but I think it's bloody good fun, though it does leave the risk of leaving you a bit red in the face. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Anyway, now it's time to look at a very simple invention, but looking at some of the styles in and around London these days, I am surprised it's not more popular. First of all, a little confession. I cannot really grow facial hair very well. Puberty came and went, leaving me with a deeper voice and the like, but I have not been blessed in the beard department, though I do save a fortune on razors, it must be said. However, if I could grow a beard, I may be tempted to grow a moustache, like many of these chaps swanning around gentrified areas of our cities. Moustaches are quite old-fashioned, really, and were very popular back in the day. Now, one struggle of a moustache is all the food and drink that can accumulate in it. Think the twits. Luckily, however, there is a solution for this. Back in 1876, Virgil Gates from West Virginia patented a moustache shield. This was a rectangular piece of material, metal or rubber for example, cut to a suitable size to cover one's moustache. It was then held in place by cords slipped over the ears or tied together around the back of your neck. It is sort of like an eye patch, but for your moustache. If you are someone with a moustache, there is a range of moustache shields available for purchase. Maybe I should branch out and produce a range of Eclectic Eccentric moustache shields. What's next? Ah, yes, pets. We all love a pet. As you may have heard in my previous episodes, I am very much a cat man. So I will say that if you don't like pets, you should. Especially if you're a big grown-up person who can get a pet without having to ask anyone. If you're not a grown-up, don't worry, your time will come soon enough. When many of us were growing up, as well as the fluffy tail-bearing pets we used to have running around the house, we used to have things like Tamagotchis. These were particularly welcomed, I imagine, by those who, for whatever reason, couldn't have a pet of their own. But what did children back in the day, before technology allowed such things as Tamagotchis, do? Well, a chap called Gary Dahl came up with the perfect idea. He invented the perfect pet. A pet that didn't need feeding, bathing, grooming, didn't have to be tidied up after. It was, of course, a pet rock. Amazingly, he managed to get 2 colleagues to invest in this project, and he did actually purchase the rocks he sold as pets for less than a penny each at some Mexican beaches. After taking a pet rock, which came in a box with air holes and straw bedding, to a trade show, he became a sensation. For about 6 months, at which point sensibility appeared to return amongst the public, who realised they could just go outside and pick up a rock from the floor. However, Gary would be the last one laughing. In that time, he sold over 1 million pet rocks, making 95 cents profit on each one. Gary became a millionaire. Now, food. It's great, isn't it? Food. Breakfast, Levensees, brunch, lunch, afternoon tea, dinner, supper, the midnight snack, and everything in between, of course. Now, I am rather partial to a good soup. Pea soup with mint or perhaps a nice lentil. Bloody marvellous. But many times I have ended up burning my tongue when I have too hastily dived into a bowl of delectable soup. If only I had discovered the soup cooling spoon, designed in 1948. Unfortunately, little appears to have been written about it, but there is a photo of a man using the contraption online. The spoon, handily disguised as a regular soup spoon, has a small propeller attached to it, which would blow away the heat and steam coming off your spoon full of soup, negating the need for you to blow on it yourself. Not only that, but I did read that in some versions, the soup spoon also allowed you to drain away the soup into a receptacle hidden somewhere on your body, just in case you didn't want to eat the soup then and wanted to save it for later. Do you recall the original Willy Wonka film? The one with Gene Wilder, the slightly trippy Roald Dahl adaptation. I remember that there's a scene where the children are walking past some wallpaper with various fruits on it, and the magical thing is that you could just lick the fruits and could actually taste them. I always liked that scene, but never thought we'd get anything like it in real life. Well, granted it's not newspaper, but in fact, a lickable television. It is again a Japanese creation. They are a wonderfully eccentric bunch, aren't they? And it was made by Professor Miyashita. The TT-TV, the Taste the TV, looks like your regular TV screen, but it is of course not just a regular TV screen. You as the viewer will pick a food item from the menu on the screen. Once selected, a machine above the TV then releases a mixture of liquid flavour samples, which is then rolled down the screen over a hygienic film. You can then lick that liquid from the screen and get a taste of whatever food you decided upon. Its creator hopes that one day everyone will have this device in their homes, as he believes it will give people access to flavours they've never experienced before, allow those with certain allergies to get tastes of food they otherwise wouldn't, and also use it to train sommeliers, for example. The professor has already started working on a more compact version of his creation, and it has been surprisingly well received. So who knows, one day you might just find yourself licking your TV screens to satisfy a sudden hankering for some cheesecake. What shall we talk about next? Music. Let's talk music. Now, you may think that portable music players are a modern day invention. We of course have our mobile phones these days, which can play us any music of our choice, and before that we had iPods, Walkmans, CD players, mini disc players, cassette players, MP3 players, all of that sort of thing, which apparently are growing again in popularity as the world tries to become a bit more analogue. But back in the 1940s, there was an invention that allowed you to listen to music, chatter, and the whatnot on the move. I am of course talking about the radio hat. Developed and manufactured by the American Mary Lee Corporation, the radio hat was a portable radio built into a pith helmet. A pith helmet, for those who aren't aware, are those stereotypical safari hats you see from time to time. Think explorers or, unfortunately, colonial military personnel from the 19th century, and you get the picture. The radio hat is a strange, alien-looking contraption with odd bits including a looping antennae sticking out the top of it. The circuit used miniature vacuum tubes, which you can see quite clearly in pictures, and this acted as an amplifier and detector for the radio signal. War, of course, is a terrible, terrible thing, but it does lead to significant progress in technology, and it meant that these vacuum tubes were now more affordable. You could search for a radio station by using a tuning knob located between the two tubes, though the antennae was somewhat directional, so you did have to be facing the right way. This said, signals could be picked up from 20 miles away, as long as you could deal with the apparent sometimes loud squeaking given the simple circuitry of the radios. They were, not surprisingly, not very good in the rain. There was after all a high voltage battery right next to your head. The hat was quickly discontinued, despite being very popular during its initial release. Certainly more of a gimmick than anything else, it did give people a look into the future at what music and radio might develop into. For our final eccentric invention, I have to bring your attention to some chaps called Dave Harding, Paul Gaunce, and Phil Savage, who, as students, built a motorised bathtub. Students of the Kingston Technical College in the UK, they built this motorised bathtub in order to raise money for charity. After locating a suitable bathtub from a fellow student, they installed an engine from a scooter down at the plug hole end, built a chassis around it so they could incorporate brakes, steering, etc., and they could even change gear. This meant that it was totally road legal at the time, and it all worked. They drove it all the way from Bath to London. Blinking marvellous, I'm sure you'd all agree. But that does, I'm afraid, ring in the end of the episode, and therefore the end of Series 3 of Eclectic Eccentrics. What a joy it has been, and we really have met some interesting characters along the way, don't you think? Please, if you wouldn't mind grabbing the rope and lowering the curtain slowly enough to make this whole thing look dramatic, I will accept your applause. This is potentially one of the UK's most sporadic podcasts, but perhaps this is only fitting given its namesake. Therefore, I will be back at some point in the not too distant future with yet more eccentrics from past and present. So, keep a weather eye on that horizon. And, as always, it has been a pleasure. I salute you. As always, at the end of these episodes, I say adieu for now.